welcome back to Pin My Podfics. This will be the reading of Chapter 13, Part 3 and 4 of Those Who Remain. Now, I'm currently recording in bulk because I will be heading. My parents just told me that we would be heading off into vacation. And so I won't be having none of my usual stuff to record, or even time to record, or space for my own to record. So I'm just recording everything right now. So if the quality isn't as good as usual, then blame my parents for that. Chapter 13, Those Who Remain. Part 3. The initial silence after the connection stabilized was broken by Dick. With a slight nod, he invited everyone to speak. There was no need for haste, no military protocol. This wasn't war anymore. This was what came after. He drew in a deep breath, his eyes traveling across the panels, to the images of each hero scattered around the world, like faint stars left behind after a great collapse. I think it would be good for us to know how things are out there, Dick suggested, his voice calm but steady. Rocket was the first to speak, her face carrying the weight of someone still unaccustomed to such responsibility. South Dakota is too quiet. She bit her lip, eyes shifting away. The streets still feel like ghosts, but kids, 15, 16-year-olds. They're raising walls, painting signs, handing out food. It's like the generation that lost their parents decided they're going to rebuild the world on their own. Dick nodded, feeling the strength hidden in the young woman who, at just 18, carried the hopes of an entire city on her shoulders. Wildcat spoke next, his voice as rough and clipped as ever. "This ain't the silence of mourning," he said flatly. "It's the silence of fear. People look at the sky like the invasion's about to start again. They go out, they work, but nobody talks. She's like fighting in an empty ring. Every punch echoes too loud." Dick noticed the others nodding subtly. Silent gestures of agreement. Alan Scott cleared his throat, his deep voice filling the chamber. "In New York, we're raising new walls every day, but no one knows if we're the same people behind them." His gaze hardened. "Rebuilding's possible. What I don't know if we can rebuild ourselves." Jay Garrick, always the paternal presence, had added, "Central City doesn't run anymore," he said softly, his words carrying quiet metaphor. "People used to live in a rush. Now, they walk, they stop to help, they share what little they have. The city lost its speed, but it's found its heart." El Dorado leaned forward, his voice calm but resolute. "Here, no one waits for government or heroes. Families cook for 10. Here, others bring water. The cities are broken, yes, but people have learned to smile again, even if only for a few minutes." From Japan, Rising Sun bowed slightly before speaking. "In Japan, we pray every day." His tone was reverent. "Every temple is filled with families honoring the dead. It's a nation in silence, yes, but it is a silence of reverence, not of defeat." Then came Inpara, his voice calm and strong, carrying the weight of the savannah behind it. "In Africa, we bury our dead at sunrise," he said gravely. "Every tribe lost people, but no tribe is alone. We weep together, and when the weeping ends, we sing. That's how we endure." Dick drew in a long breath and closed his eyes for a second. This was exactly what he needed to hear. And then Constantine lit a cigarette with the insolent calm of a man who knew everyone hated him for it. He took a deep drag, exhaled slowly, and gave the camera a sideways look. Well, hate to ruin the group therapy session, but it ain't all sunshines and roses. His lazy accent dripped disdain. Magic's a bloody mess, unstable, cracked, like glass about to shatter in your face. He leaned closer, his tired but sharp gaze cutting through the room. Every spell I try feels like it could tear me in half, or rip a hole in the whole damn world. And you know why? He let the cigarette dangle between his fingers, his voice dropping low, almost like a lament. Because the bloody champion of magic, Captain Marvel, is dead. The silence that followed was suffocating. Zatanna immediately leaned forward, her voice tight. John, I can't look into this. If magic is unstable, I can help. We can't. But Constantine laughed, harsh, bitter, like a punch to the gut. Oh, no. He shook his head, pointing the cigarette at the camera like a weapon. I'm not gonna sit here drinking and smoking while some grieving girl tries to shoulder a burden I can't even bloody carry myself. If it's all on you, Z. He exhaled twin streams of smoke through his nose. Then you might as well kill me now. Zatanna pressed her lips together, her eyes wet, but she didn't answer. That's when Jason Blood, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was low, steady, carrying weight. He's right. We can't let you bear this alone, Zatanna. I'll help. Magic needs us now. But Jason hadn't even finished before Alan Scott raised his hand, commanding attention. His voice, deep and paternal, filled the virtual chamber. All right, let's be clear about one thing. Alan Scott's gaze moved from screen to screen, each veteran face reflecting decades of experience. The chaos was immense, but not total. There are still adults alive, organizing cities, maintaining improvised governments, coordinating communities. Jay Garrick nodded, adding, people need stable examples, not kids running themselves into the ground. We, the older ones, the ones still standing, will handle the immediate rebuilding. We'll help restore hospitals, supplies, communications. Alan drew in a slow breath and leaned closer to the screen. And I'll reach out to the government and the UN. The world needs to know there are still heroes alive and that they're not alone. That message has to reach the civic leaders. It has to be official. If people believe we're finished, the chaos will only grow. Vixen leaned forward, her tone firm. And you young ones, you need to stop. It's not cowardice, it's survival. The world needs you to rest now, so you can fight tomorrow. Alan's voice resonated, grave and steady, filling the screens. The world needs stability. You've already carried more than you should. Now it's our turn to bear the weight. The words hung in the air, but did not settle easily. Wally was the first to break, leaning forward, his voice spilling out as fast as if it couldn't be contained. But we can't just sit around. There are people who need help right now. Zatanna clenched her fist on the table, her voice tight. It's not fair. I know I can still do something. Roy crossed his arms, eyes locked on the screen. If you want to rebuild from the top down, fine, but we can still fight on the ground. Midoriya lifted his head, his voice low but resolute, heavy with determination. A hero doesn't retreat. The silence that followed was crushing, until Jay Garrick leaned closer. His parental eyes rested on the young group with the tenderness of a grandfather speaking to his grandchildren. And precisely because you are heroes, you need to stop now. You're not disposable tools. You've done enough, more than anyone had the right to expect from you. Alan nodded in agreement. You gave the world a flame when there was only darkness, but that flame must be preserved. If you burn yourselves out now, what will be left for tomorrow? The weight of those words made the tower's command room feel even colder. Wally lowered his eyes. Zatanna bit her lip. Roy clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. Midoriya only closed his eyes, breathing deep, trying to wrestle down the instinct that always pushed him forward. Then Mira's steady voice cut through the silence. Before anything else, we must face our losses. Next month, Atlantis will hold Arthur's funeral. It's what my people need now. Hippolyta lifted her chin, her tone carrying the solemnity of a queen. And Themyscira will do the same for Diana. Farewell is necessary. Mourning is not weakness. It is discipline. Alan Scott turned on his screen, eyes setting firmly on Rocket. How old are you, girl? Rocket blinked at the question, but lifted her head and answered, 18. Alan nodded, then looked toward Wildcat. I want you to go to South Dakota. Help this girl. Wildcat sighed, scratching the back of his neck. Fine. My city's quiet for now. I can do that. Rocket opened her mouth, starting to protest. I don't need a babysitter. But no one paid her objection any mind. Garrick leaned in, fixing Wally with the same look he'd used years ago when Wally was just an impulsive kid. Wally, I want you to stay put for a while. Iris, she'll come for you soon. Wally blinked in surprise. But I can just run back, Jay shook his head. No, stay. Rest. You've already done enough. Wally lowered his gaze and after a moment nodded silently. Then Alan Scott leaned forward again, the faint green glow of his ring casting light over his features, his eyes locked on Dick, as if the screen itself were between them. Dick, he said, his tone grave but not harsh. The young leader raised his head, swallowing hard. Are you prepared? Have you prepared a funeral for Bruce? The silence that followed seemed eternal. The knot in Dick's throat tightened until it nearly choked him. He drew a deep breath, his hands curling into fists on the table, and answered in a voice low, almost a whisper. No. Alan nodded slowly with the serenity of a man who understood pain without needing to name it. Then do that first. Before you worry about the world, worry about him. Honor him. Only then you can move forward. All eyes turned to Dick. Wally, his face tight with concern. Zatanna, her eyes shining with tears. Roy, silent and careful, respectful. Midoriya gazing at him with admiration of someone who knew this burden should never fall on a boy, but who also saw he carried it all the same. Dick breathed deeply, fighting to hold himself together, and nodded. I will. The sentence that followed was no longer one of protest, nor of defiance. It was the heavy silence of mourning and of acceptance. Now to those who remain, part 4. Part 4. The cold glow of the holograms flickered, wavering in the thin air of the watchtower's command room. It was as if even the systems themselves, strained by time and war, hesitated to sustain the fragile link binding survivors scattered across a broken planet. Silence had descended after Alan Scott's final words. Dense, heavy, almost tangible. For a moment, no one breathed deeply. No one dared to break that stillness. The air seemed thick with the weight of unspoken losses, the kind no speech could heal. And it was in the pause that a voice rose, unexpected, slicing through the quiet like a blade. "Who is that one?" The question carried no hostility, but the grave, suspicious curiosity of someone long accustomed to sniffing at anomalies. Jason Blood tilted his head towards the corner of the screen, his eyes narrowing as if he had only just noticed the young figure seated further back, quiet as a shadow. Izuku Midoriya. He had been there the whole time, but his stillness had rendered him almost invisible. He had listened to every word, every promise, every memory recalled by the veterans. Without daring to interrupt, now all eyes turned to him. Rocket's brows rose in surprise. Vixen's watchful gaze measured him from a distance, as though weighing his strength. Even Hippolyta, who until then had held her regal composure, tilted her chin slightly, appraising. Midoriya slowly lifted his head. His green eyes were tired, rimmed with exhaustion of more than just body. They carried a stubborn resolve, the reflection of someone who, even crushed beneath responsibility, refused to break. He didn't speak. He simply held their gazes. Dick sighed and straightened. "He showed up at the end of the invasion," he explained, his voice low but firm, each word carrying a quiet shield of protection around the boy. "He saved my life, and Wally's. He did what many of us couldn't do." Wally's lips twitched into the faintest smile of smiles, almost imperceptible but filled with genuine gratitude. Satana lowered her eyes, acknowledging in silence. Midoriya, however, looked down again, shoulders tight. He sought no recognition, no title. He was simply there, breathing beside them, trying to convince himself he still belonged at that table of survivors. No one pressed further. Jason Blood gave a small nod, registering the boy's presence but demanding nothing more. The matter died there, swallowed by the weight of heavier griefs. Alan Scott leaned forward slightly, the faint green shimmer of his ring flickering against his austere expression. His voice came deep, burdened with responsibility. "I've received contact from the government," he said, pausing as though measuring each word. "They want to know if it's true, if the League has really fallen completely. They ask if a collective funeral should be held. For all of them." The room sank into silence. The act of officially confirming that loss seemed a weight greater than any battle. Alan continued, never breaking eye contact with the screen. I told them yes, that the League is gone." He drew in a deep breath before adding, "But I will also tell them that they are still heroes, that resistance remains. You, us, those who are left." Zatanna's eyes widened, her breath caught as though she'd been struck. Rocket covered her mouth with a trembling hand, unable to process the thought of formalizing a loss she was trying to deny. Vixen closed her eyes for a brief moment, inhaling deeply, as though bracing herself against a truth she had already sensed. The younger heroes exchanged tense looks. For the first time, it felt real, that soon the entire world would know the League was truly gone, and in some unspoken way, they would begin to be seen as successors. Wally froze. Barry's name rang in his mind like a wound torn open. The laughter, the lessons, the quiet counsel of his uncle. Distant now, yet so alive it hurt. He dropped his gaze to his trembling hands, hiding the weakness as best as he could. Across the feed, Jay Garrick looked at him with the same paternal warmth he had always carried. He didn't speak, but his eyes said everything. "I know what you lost, and I'm here." Hippolyta held her regal posture, but her voice, when it came, carried the weight of a grieving mother. Themyscira will do the same for Diana. She deserves every honor. And more. Queen Mara leaned forward, her tone as steady as the tide. Arthur will be remembered. Atlantis is already preparing the rites. Each declaration struck like a hammer blow, sealing the truth that the League, once the shield of the world, now lived only in memory, epitaphs, and monuments yet to be built. Then Alan's gaze turned directly to Dick. His tired, steady eyes bore no judgment, only respect. "And when time comes," he said, his voice softer now, "I expect an invitation." Dick swallowed hard, the lump in his throat tight, threatening his voice. He nodded slowly, firmly, managing only a whisper. "You'll get one." Alan's reply carried no judgment, only quiet understanding. "Then do it, before you worry about the world. Bury your father." The silence that followed was suffocating. Wally turned away, lips parting as though to speak, but finding no words. Zatanna clenched her eyes shut, tears threatening to break free. Midoriya stared at Dick, eyes wide, recognizing in those words a command that could just as easily apply to himself. Face the loss instead of running forward. One by one, the veterans began to sign off. Hippolyta inclined her head, her stern gaze softening for a heartbeat. Mara lifted her chin in respect before her image dissolved into blue fragments. Wildcat gave a short nod, like a promise to return if called. El Dorado placed a hand over his chest in silent reverence. Jay Garrick, before disconnecting, spoke softly but firmly to Wally. "Rest, kid. Barry would have wanted that." Wally bit his lip hard, nodding silently. Finally, Constantine stubbed out his cigarette in a dented ashtray and muttered, "If this funeral's good for anything, it'll be to remind us that even the immortals aren't." And with that, he disconnected without waiting for a reply. The holograms flickered one by one until only the dim afterglow of fading systems remained, returning the room to the cold quiet of the watchtower. Dick stood still, eyes fixed on the metal table before him, breath heavy. The dead screen reflected the image of a 13-year-old boy carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. A boy now tasked with planning the funeral of Earth's greatest hero. Behind him, Midoriya remained, quiet, motionless, breathing deeply as though he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Their eyes met briefly, and in that silence was a shared truth. Two young men who hadn't chosen their burdens, but who knew, somehow, they had to bear them. Dick closed his eyes and drew in a long breath, letting the room's sacred stillness settle around him. Outside, the world still bled. But in that moment, a new promise was being forged. Not of victory, not of glory, but of endurance. Because even in funerals, there was hope. And that was the end of this chapter. Chapter 13, Those Who Remain, Part 3 and 4. Dex, from After the Fall by Innocent with _reader. Then, gosh, I recorded this in so many different days because one day I found time to, record a bit, and then I had to go do something. And then I was able to go, just yesterday I was able to record a bit of it. And now, today, I just finished recording it, finally. Like, it's not longer than any of my usual ones, but, like, damn. Don't know why it took me so long, but yeah. Be sure to go head over on AO3 and all of that. Please, I also leave constructive criticism for me. Alright, because I don't know what I can do to better my audio recording, because sometimes it's shitty, sometimes it's good. Depends on where I record. I mean, if I were to record in my closet again, but I don't have that option. Because I only record in my closet when I know nobody's there at home, in the house. Because they're gonna ask so many questions if I do that. And, be sure to check the author out and all of that. Link description, all that. Have a good whatever time of the day. And that's it.